This is Arpita Patil. I'm an associate software engineer at Tory Harris. The topic of our discussion today is the API and application integration governance, its best practices, and also the lessons learned. So, first, I'd like to introduce our speaker of the day to you. Today, we have with us Karthik TS, the head of Center of Excellence and Products team at Tory Harris Integration Solutions. Over the last 2 decades, Karthik has worked extensively with the telcos, banks, and financial institutions, helping them define their integration strategy to realize specific digital business objectives. In his current role, he spearheads organization wide initiatives, prioritizing solutions to accelerate enterprise digital imperatives. Karthik has also co authored the book Digital API Economy Beneficiaries, Enablers, and Catalysts. So let's actually hear it from Karthik himself. And I'd like to welcome Karthik on the session. Um, Maybe we'll begin with the session now. The stage is all yours, Karthik.
Thank
Over
you
to
very
you.
much, Arpita. Good evening, all. I welcome you for the meetup session. So this evening, I'm going to talk about API and application integration, governance best practices and lessons learned. So the term governance has always got a lot of attention for enterprises. Right? It's a tricky term. It means different things to different people. And when anything means different things to different people, the picture that comes to mind is a very famous fable from the ancient India. It's like the elephant and the six blind men. So many of you are familiar with this fable. So the governance is seen by different groups only from their perspective. I mean, some see governance only as a set of rules, some see them as a set of principles, some look at it from an enforcement perspective. The term govern has a element of, okay, you have a kind of a governing body and the body that is governed, right? So that's the general picture in people's mind, and in this session that's exactly what I'm going to change that thinking and share the best practice and lesson learned, to show you how the governance has evolved and changed in the recent times, where the term governance itself has a completely different expression and representation in today's digital world. I mean, that does not mean to say that governance is not important. It's extremely important. And if you see our website, we have spent a lot of time capturing our experience and sharing our knowledge with the community in terms of different blogs, white papers, and best practices in terms of what exactly are we sharing. So 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 if you kind of let me explain how governance is seen in an enterprise context, I would like to set the stage and give you a representation of how an enterprise looks like. So, a small disclaimer: my house is right behind a train track, so if you hear some train noise, excuse me for that. Yeah, but it's some just something to just be aware of. So the next slide gives you a picture of a modern digital enterprise. So here we're talking in the context of APIs and integration, right? So when you talk about APIs, APIs need developers. So, and in this context, when I use the term developers, I mean external developers. So today, API is always used in the context of API that's exposed outside the enterprise, and you have a partner network and a startup ecosystem that's consuming your APIs. Think of Uber, think of all the kind of modern kind of enterprises. If you take a telco, it's all powered by APIs like location APIs, messaging APIs. So today, every business capability is recast as APIs, both for consumption for internal use and external use. But the key thing is, as an enterprise, the most important point to keep in mind is APIs should be used. Okay. Generally, there is a kind of a understanding that API is always associated with reuse. But before reuse, the first thing is it should be of use. And when I say it should be of use, yeah, so what I was telling is APIs need developers, developer needs users, and users need to see the benefit. Only then the API will be accepted as a useful API, right? So what does it mean when you say API is useful, right? So governance function actually provides its services to a team that actually identifies and builds the API. So this is where the leader of this team sees the need for governance as a function. Now, what does this team do? This team serves the lines of business and business units, because anything that you build ultimately gets delivered to the end user through one of the business offerings, and these business offerings are actually provided through lines of businesses or business units. Right. Now, the business units actually serves the enterprise. When I say serves the enterprise, the ultimate objective of a business unit is to bring in revenue to the enterprise. Right. So far, whatever I've talked about is it's kind of fundamentals to any business. Like any business is driven completely from the value that it provides to its customers or users. Right. So the reason why I showed these points of value generation, so that when you build your governance function, you always start from the red circle, which is you always start from the customers and users, and then work backwards in terms of how your governance can be structured in terms of formulating your principles, your practices, or rules, or whatever, so that your users are able to see the benefits. So the users don't really care about the governance principles or process. All they care about is the customer experience. They care about whether their access, whether they're using an app, or they're using e-commerce, or whether they're doing a transaction or website, it's seamless or not. But what really powers their experience is the API. So the build of that API should be governed. And the principles that you put in place to govern the build of that API is driven from your users' need. So always when you start putting together a governance framework, you first make a list. Who are my users? What are their priorities? What are the points in which the users' lives can be improved? And what is a point, data point in terms of a user frustration point, or a user delight point, or a strategic fitment. Like let's say if you launch a new offering, and if the users are interested in it, and if that offering becomes a super hit, then it means you're redefining your whole business, which means inventing new business models. So now how should your governance be structured in such a way that you are inventing new business models? So these are the starting points. These are the questions you need to kind of list down, have the answers before formulating any governance function, right? So this is what we call an outside in perspective. So when you define your APIs in terms of what you want to do and put a governance function, this is how you should approach. Now, so far we talked about your users. Now, in today's digital world, your users are not just your direct users. So you also have indirect users. Now, what do you mean by indirect users? So this is where the concept of an extended enterprise comes into picture. So an extended enterprise is your partner network that consumes your capabilities as APIs. And extended enterprise also has customers, right? Take a classic example of a mobile operator, right? And a mobile operator exposes APIs like location, billing, charge to mobile identity, and all that. And your extended enterprise example could be a startup that's building let's say a parking service application. Okay, let's say it kind of provides a capability to charge the parking fee directly to the mobile subscription of its users. So that means the parking service customers become the customers of the extended enterprise. Now you need to also understand the priorities in terms of what makes the life better in terms of the customer experience of these users, and accordingly work backwards and formulate your governance function. Right. So the whole takeaway point is to look at how to work backwards from the extended user network, right? So this is the premise. So with this premise, let's see how to set up the governance function. So so this is where we'd like to introduce three key roles in governance. So the governance as a function should divide the organization into three specific groups of people, or groups of departments, I would put it that way: beneficiaries, enablers, and catalysts. And we have been talking about this for quite some time, and this is the topic of the book that I co-authored with my colleagues on this. So the term beneficiaries is derived from the word benefit. Now, who gets the benefit? If I have to kind of go back and show the slide, if you see, read the line on top: API need developers, developers need users, and users need to see the benefit. So users should be benefited. And when users benefit, who gets the benefit? The company gets the benefit. And the benefit is in the form of increased revenue, increased customer satisfaction, increased market share, and overall growth, and the increased brand value of the business. So the organization gets the actual benefit. And which team delivers this benefit to the organization? This team, the business units and LOBs. So the term beneficiaries actually applies to this circle, the business units and LOBs. So it's very important when you put together a governance framework, you need to have a very clear understanding in terms of who your beneficiaries are. So a beneficiary is a team that says, I commit to making sure that whatever is built in this layer, that benefit is actually realized to the enterprise through means of customer satisfaction, both your customers and your extended customers, right? So that team is a beneficiary team. Classic example is the vice presidents of a business unit, the sales and marketing heads of different business units. It could be even your staff. Let's say any business has a high street store, and any touch point to the direct customer is a beneficiary because they are fully exposed to customer pain areas, customer opportunities, and the problems that customers have. Right. So that's the definition of a beneficiary. Now you have enablers. Now, why do you need enablers? Now, before talking about why do you need enablers, let's understand who are enablers. Right. So enablers are team members that are owners of the application system. So if you take any API, if you come from the technical background, you'll know that an API ultimately exposes a system of record or a capability that lies within your backend system. Right. Now, these backend system owners are the enablers. Ultimately, the API is fulfilled at the backend level. Right? So these backend system owners have a big role to play in API enablement. So the reason why I'm stressing the role of enablers is we have had very interesting scenarios in our experience in large transformation projects. So we had scenarios where the integration team, the API and integration team were all very excited. They identified API use cases. They identified backend systems. They integrated with the systems only to realize that the backend systems did not have an owner and the backend systems did not have any roadmap in terms of upgrading the capacity or adding new features or evolution or anything. Now imagine how you are going to delight your customers or even your extended customers if the backend system is abandoned or if it does not have any owners or any users, right? So it's like a supply chain. You have to visualize this whole thing like a supply chain. So your backend system owners are your suppliers. And API and integration team ultimately, when they deliver experience to the business units, and business units delivers an experience to the enterprise, and ultimately aims to deliver a benefit to your users and extended users, you can't have a kind of a successful outcome if you don't address the needs of your enablers. So mapping the API use cases completely to the last mile and making sure that your enablers don't become the weakest link in your chain is a key function in your governance, and this is what we call enablement. Then, what is a catalyst? Now we saw what's a beneficiary, we saw what's an enabler. Now, a catalyst is a team that actually is your integration team, right? So, a catalyst, as the name suggests, it's a word derived from chemistry. A catalyst is a thing in the chemical reaction that does not actually change, but it accelerates change between other elements in the chemical reaction, right? So catalyst is an accelerator, which means a catalyst identifies the priorities of the users, your beneficiaries, and maps it to the roadmap of enablers. So the catalyst is the one who kind of plans a session and says, look, what are the current customer pain areas? What are the priorities? What are the new business offerings? Where is the company heading? What new offers we are going to launch? And then with those item list, it's going to see, okay, fine, now I've identified a dependency. Okay, to fulfill these expectations, I've identified 10 different backend systems. Now these backend systems don't have any capability, or maybe this capability is not fit for purpose yet. You need to have a roadmap, you need to make so and so changes, and they basically connect the dots and make sure that the roadmap of the beneficiaries is completely aligned with the roadmap of the enablers. And that is a very key function of the catalyst. So the integration team, your API team and your integration team fulfill the role of catalysts. So that's the a very key dimension in terms of how to look at governance as a outside in perspective. So far, if I kind of draw the first slide, the elephant analogy, I've not even covered the other parts, the process frameworks and principles, because these things are important. I'm not saying that these things are not part of the governance. These things are definitely a part of governance. I'm going to talk about it in the upcoming slides. But the danger with looking at this only from a kind of a narrow viewpoint is, you think that you're setting up governance, but if you look at it from a narrow standpoint, you will end up creating a very good set of frameworks, metrics, and best practices without the user context. So it'll almost be like you will end up becoming an author of a textbook, which is not exactly what we want in an enterprise when you want to make a difference to the user. Of course, there's no disrespect to textbook material. We all understand principles. We all need to look at the basics and fundamentals, no doubt about it. I mean, I can say that myself as an author of many of the principles and patterns. But ultimately, a pattern is not useful if it does not solve a pain area of an end user. And this is where the governance team, has the power and should have the power to change the pattern, tailor the pattern based on the beneficiaries' needs. Okay. So yeah, so I'll not go into so all this while it's just a kind of a summary recap of what are the roles of beneficiaries, enablers, and catalyst. Now, this needs to be done in the form of a workshop, and this is an example of the workshop that we have conducted across the customers. So what we do is, people don't know whether they are beneficiaries, enablers, or catalysts. So this is where we need role playing. And in this picture, you see that we provide cloaks, and that's me wearing the role of a catalyst and doing the workshop. And we basically allow people to wear a cloak and say, okay, fine. Why have you picked up a cloak? Why do you think you're a beneficiary? What are the pain areas? So when we do this workshop, a lot of points will emerge. You'll know that you are actually a beneficiary, enablers, or catalyst, and you'll actually share experiences. Yeah, you'll say that, yeah, okay, I know a particular scenario where a customer pain point has not been addressed, and it's not working in the integration, and the integration team is not solving it. So that's the point where right then you actually identify who is the enabler in the team, who is the catalyst in the team, and you kind of agree on specific points. So this is what we call socialization. And so far, if you see, this style of governance is more towards a kind of a participative governance, a collaborative governance. So far, you can't enforce these things. You can't say that henceforth you have been branded as a enabler team, and these are your obligations. Go and fulfill these obligations. It doesn't work in any modern enterprise today. So the governance has shifted from what we call the governance to an extent where you don't even use the word governance. We call this an empowerment. So we don't use the term governance framework anymore. We use the term empowerment framework, because people like to be empowered. People need to be facilitated. People need to collaborate. So we call this light touch governance or participative governance, where every player participates. They know the big picture, because ultimately they all serve the organization. They all serve the customers, and no member in the organization goes against the principles of serving the customer. And whatever they do in terms of putting the guidelines or rules or principles for themselves, it's all aligned to the end user perspective. Now, coming to the known parts in the governance. So now that we have talked about the purpose and the way in which you should approach governance, now let's look at one dimension in that elephant diagram. Okay, because it's not wise to ignore that part. The reason why you need to focus on these parts is to put it in perspective. So every time when you formulate each of these boxes that I've shown here, you should always think of the beneficiaries, enablers, and catalyst, and work backwards from the your customers and your extended enterprise customers. Right. So this is the kind of a view. I'll not go into each of these details, but I would like to say that we, as Torii Harris, as an experience in working with different large enterprises, we have a starting point for each of these boxes. We call these cookbooks. So when we start a governance establishment engagement, we have a very good starting point, and we always start with workshops like this. And say, okay, fine, who are the beneficiaries, what are your priorities, and then take each box and tailor them. over a kind of a period of engagement. And what we also say is it's not even just adequate if you tailor, you need to apply these principles in a pilot, which means you need to pick some projects that are going live. You need to identify some customer journeys that are set to make a difference to your customers and your extended enterprise. And then tailor these principles. And then at the end of delivering it, you actually go back and measure, have I actually delivered a value to the customer? Has there been a difference? What is the before and after metrics? What are the KPIs? So then you have a frame of reference for measurement. So you know that whatever tailoring you have done in these boxes, you know that you have actually delivered some value to governance as a function. If you don't think in these lines and work in these lines, you are just putting together a set of theoretical material that is not going to be of any use to the customer. And this is the reason why many governance initiatives fail. And that's the reason why many governance initiatives don't get the required funding. Or they ultimately, what happens is the lack of governance is you don't actually see it from a customer's perspective, and you actually lose sight of your customers in an extended enterprise. You build up a lot of APIs that are not finding any use for the customers, or the users use the API and they don't see any benefit, and you build hundreds of APIs that are lying idle in a shelf. And the CIO gets questioned from the business. Okay, I've invested millions of dollars in your API program. Why are users not using it? When we have seen this pain area that customers are facing, and customers usually come to us when they actually face that pain area. Now, look, help us improve the value of the APIs, increase the utilization, increase the use, increase the reuse. Okay, now that we have talked about these points, now let's see how these fits in the customer journey. I mean, this is a point where when you have these processes, it's not just adequate if you have these processes in isolation. You need to actually apply it and integrate it with your development lifecycle. This is where you actually make sure that the rubber hits the road. Now you know what are the customer priorities, you know the beneficiaries' priorities, you have tailored all these artifacts. Now you align it with your software development lifecycle, and software development lifecycle will be different in different organizations. And this is where the governance establishment function kicks in. So you spend a couple of weeks with the different development teams. You work with business units. You identify what their lifecycle looks like, and you align it with the process. Now, coming to the technical part, so far I've refrained from any technology part, and I'm not going to go deep as well. But we live in today's world where there are a lot of components that have overlapping capabilities. Today, we're talking about hybrid integration platform. We're talking about cloud native, the multi-cloud platforms, microservices, iPaaS, whatnot, right? So we have seen from our experience that customers are a bit lost because there are so many technical blocks that have competing features, similar features, duplicate capabilities. So you don't want to reinvent the wheel. We have seen different business units buying the same piece of technology, using it in different ways, where if there was governance, they could have kind of referenced it and avoided reinventing the wheel. So one of the architecture principles is to make sure that you identify these overlaps and put together a process to make sure that you manage these overlaps in efficient way. And this is why you need an integration decision tree. So decision tree is one of the artifacts that I've shown. Again, working backwards from the customer priorities, because all the scenarios that you have talked about is again driven from the customer's perspective. And every slide, I want to reiterate the importance of working backwards from the customer's perspective, because that's exactly what matters. And we have seen from our experience that customers don't look at it from the end user's perspective. A lot of APIs that are not used, and the ROI. So this is an example. I'll not go into too much of detail, but I'd like to say that each box here is a kind of a drill down. So we have different paths and different decision trees to address different scenarios. So each green box is further a kind of a sub decision tree. So I'm not going to the detail in the interest of time, but showing you what we bring to the table as a result of our experience in this field. And this is again a decision tree for transforming your legacy components, your legacy integration into a cloud native based integration. And this is where different building blocks fit into picture, like your data virtualization, your microservices, your containerization, and all the other stuff. So So from our experience, we have also seen that enterprises need to have coexistence. You need to have a coexistence with your legacy and modern. And governance also has a role to play in avoiding big bang transformations, which usually doesn't work. The reason, again, we don't recommend big bang transformations, and it generally doesn't work, is again, it's not in the interest of the customer. Customers don't want to wait. And big bang transformations, by definition, are multi-year transformation projects. It takes a lot of time to migrate the applications, migrate the data, redo all the testing, and it's a painful exercise. So you need to have a migration strategy in place and align it with the governance framework, so that you are able to seamlessly keep the customer's interest in mind. Yeah. So last but not the least, we have a set of tools and accelerators that we have built from our experience in all the engagements. So these fit in the different life cycle stages of the products. Again, these tools were developed keeping the development life cycle in mind, and also the end user needs in mind. So this has an indirect impact on the end user impact. So any accelerator that you do indirectly influences the customer in terms of the overall customer experience, the stability of the API, the testability of the API, the code coverage of APIs, the deployment automation of the APIs. So I'll not go into each of the tool in detail, but they have a role to play in the development lifecycle. Some fit in the DevOps, some fit in the test automation, some actually fit in your API journey itself. They are API management tools. Some are sandbox automation tools. So especially when you talk about extended enterprise, Sandbox has a big role to play. So all these tools fit in the overall customer journeys of the APIs. So that's all I had in terms of this brief talk. So to summarize, the key three roles in the organization are beneficiaries, enablers, and catalysts. And the term beneficiary is derived from the word benefit, and the benefit always applies to the benefit to the end user, and benefit to the end user translates to the benefit to the organization in terms of revenue, market share, business value, new offerings, and overall brand value of the organization. And extended enterprise also represents the overall reach of the organization and ability to leapfrog your competition, considering the threats you have. So governance has a big role to play, and all the principles, patterns, rules, reference architectures, whatever you are aware of, should always be driven from the beneficiaries' priorities and always connected and a touch point visualized from the customer standpoint.